Hey, welcome to another great episode of the Real Deal Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Courtney Harden. Happy Wednesday evening on the East Coast here, 10 p.m., August 13th. Very excited to have my next guest here, and this is Mike Sando. And the quarterback rankings are here, the tiers, quarterback tiers rankings. He's a senior writer for The Athletic, also Hall of Famer selector. Again, QB tiers. We're going to get into all of that, the quarterback tiers of 2025. Mike, welcome back to the show. Really appreciate it.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me on. What
For
grabbed you about the tiers this year?
Ooh, that's a good question right off the top.
Maybe we'll find out. Maybe we'll
Yeah,
find
we'll
out.
find out. But if I wanted to know if Patrick Mahomes is going to stay number one. That was one of the first questions. I want to see how close. I know he's going to still be number one, but I want to see how close the others were to him.
Yeah.
Josh Allen and Joe Burrow. Lamar now is tier one. So yeah, and then got to talk about my man Jalen Hurts, since I'm an Eagles fan. So I
Oh
know that's
yeah.
that got a lot of talking points. So we'll get into to all of that. But
Yeah.
those are some of the keys that I really what I was waiting for this to come out. So I got to see it, I
Yeah.
got to read it. It's always great. So thank you
Yeah.
again for your
Yeah.
time.
Yep. Glad to be here.
Yeah, all right. Well, let's get started. Let me ask you the same question. What has surprised you first and foremost from last season to until this season? Any
Yeah.
surprises, or what's the landscape so far?
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit of a mild surprise to see Matthew Stafford climb into tier one, but
Yeah,
I think we can explain it because he was so close. He was always really high in tier two. And so I think, from year to year, some of the voters are different. I don't have the same 50 every year. So it's
right.
possible. I think he got 5 more tier one votes and just nudged him over. So he's in tier one, but there's a big gap between him and the top four, which is Mahomes, Burrow, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson. They're way out ahead. I would say, I thought there was a chance that Jared Goff might
Mm,
fall, or at least have some people wondering what's going to happen without Ben Johnson.
yeah,
He's been very good the last few years, but that was one that, what, no one really expressed too great of concerns. He stayed really high. Um, I didn't know that Jalen Hurts would be such a talking point because I feel like he's in the right place. We can talk about that more. I'm sure you have questions there. And then
yeah,
then the last one was probably just, of that 2024 rookie class, obviously Jaden Daniels was the star right out of the gates, and Bo Nix was efficient and had a good year. Drake May probably in a tough situation, but did okay. I thought some of the comments and just the general tone on Caleb Williams was a little bit more negative than you would have thought, certainly going into last year, but even coming out of it, it was a bad situation, you could say. The coaches got fired, obviously.
yeah.
And so but it wasn't like the voters were like cutting a lot of slack to Caleb Williams. Maybe they're holding him to a higher standard because he's the number one pick, but there was a lot of people who just didn't think he was processing things quickly enough. And that's one of the reasons he had so many sacks.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the Caleb Williams. When I was reading it, like you said, it was negative, and I figured it would be. I don't know if it's just like you said, the his play, the team was pretty bad, as you said. They fired a coach, and it was just a bad situation for him. But he was in tier three. But let's start at the top with tier one. Patrick
Mm-hmm.
Mahomes again. The top of the board is we just was talking about. I was wondering, okay, who's gonna either jump him or is he gonna stay number one?
Yeah.
Joe Burrow was very close. You had Josh Allen, and you said Lamar Jackson, who jumped into tier one, and Matthew Stafford also jumped into tier one. How close was it that, with Mahomes not having up to his standards the past 2 years, how close was it that either Joe Burrow or Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen was to maybe overtaking that number one spot?
Yeah. So, Mahomes, I think Mahomes got all 50 tier one votes. And I
Yeah,
don't think that's going to change. I really don't. I think the only way that would change is if, let's just say, his stats kind of remained, like you said, sort of, not what they were in the past, and they were sort of losing games, or miss the playoffs or bow out early, overtaken, and Josh Allen or Lamar beats them in the playoffs, and or Burrow for that matter, and they have way better stats and win the Super Bowl. I think then there can be a conversation, but Mahomes has gained so much respect. And last year he was 11-0 in the one score games. So even though that's a lot of one score games, they're it feels like people are catching them a little bit, and they lost in the Super Bowl. Um, he's still winning all those games. So
Yeah.
I think that he's secure there. So maybe a little surprising that Joe Burrow also got all 50 tier one votes. I could have seen him getting one or two, not being in tier one after missing the playoffs, even though he did everything he could to get him in there. And I think Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, they're almost unanimous tier one. I think Josh Allen got 3 tier two votes. Lamar got 4. I think that's just a little bit of, somewhat of the quarterbacks who rely on their legs a lot. I think there's always been some pushback to that in the league. That hey, uh, that maybe Mahomes and Burrow are in a different class as passers, just a little bit cleaner, better passers. I think that's debatable. To me, Lamar and Josh Allen were clear tier ones, and most of the panel believe that. 47 of the 50 on Josh Allen, 46 of the 50 on Lamar. And if you go back, I was looking at like 2020. Aaron Rodgers was 46 tier one and 4 tier two. That's the same as Lamar this year, so that's high respect.
Yeah, very high respect. And just to piggyback on the Mahomes, it's like, reading some of the comments that said Mahomes has the Brady seat now until someone proves otherwise. As you said, he's still winning, even though they didn't win the Super Bowl last year. They still got there again, and
Yeah,
I feel like with Burrow and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, till they beat him. And they're still winning 14, 15 games, even if it
yeah,
doesn't look like the standard that he has set. I also heard about, okay, maybe Mahomes has peaked now, and I don't know if that's true either because he still stays 29, and they're still the TNCCs are still the cream of the crop of the AFC. So
yeah.
it is
I
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah,
Their weaponry's been an issue, but I really
yeah,
feel like getting that left tackle spot solidified
right,
would be a big deal for them. And if you look at these other guys up there, Lamar's they re-signed Ronnie Stanley, good left tackle. The Bills have a good left tackle, so I think that's been a real problem for them. And I remember writing last season that Dan Marino back in the day was somebody like Mahomes who right out of the gates was like setting records, just
yeah,
on fire. And then he tailed off a little bit with his stats. And part of it was because they didn't have a good left tackle. Their tackle situation was making it tougher. They went and got Richmond Webb, who had like 7 Pro Bowls, and Dan Marino's stats came back for a while till he was injured. I think he did an Achilles. So I think that's a big part of it. They drafted in the first round of tackle this year, who's super talented, but was coming off of a knee injury, but has looked good so far. So if they solve left tackle, I think we may see some of Mahomes' stats improve.
yeah. I think so. I really do, and it seems like he's getting that joy back. I read something there too, as maybe that was something else, and you said the personnel and
Yeah,
offensive line, and it just showed in the Super Bowl. That the lack of the offensive line that really hurt them. But again, they still made it. He did just enough. Again, he's still Patrick Mahomes. So Lamar Jackson, and there was a
mhm.
lot like the last few years talk about was he not tier one, and
Yeah,
now the back to back dominant years that he's had. Now he's finally jumped into tier one. What got
mhm.
Lamar fun
Yeah,
to finally? Because I know that was always a talking point over the last few years
it was.
from these tiers. So, but now Lamar is solidified into the number 4 slot, but in tier one.
Yeah, so if you go back to when Lamar first came into the league and he had that great MVP year in 2019, his first full year as a starter, and he pushed up really high in tier two. And then he continued to be really good, but we would see in the playoffs, it was like he got solved, had really bad games. And so I think, some of those folks who, are skeptical of the running quarterback when they're not a polished passer yet, were sort of validated by the fact that it dried up for him when it mattered the most. Then he went through the contract thing. COVID happened. He was a little, it was a little out of joint with the team. It felt like it was just sort of like he's wavering. Remember, he missed those games at the end of years, and you're
Yeah,
like, okay, is he just sort of sitting out for the contract? I think he lost a little bit of his luster, so he stayed high in tier two, but he just didn't make the push. Wasn't breaking through in the playoffs. I think the last 2 years they switched offenses to. I think the ball's in his hands more as a passer. He's shown that he's really made progress there. And then he's been better in the playoffs. Like he hasn't just had terrible playoff games. If you look at last year, it's Mark Andrews dropping the ball. It's not Lamar messing up the game in any way. And then I think the big thing last year was they weren't as good on defense. Baltimore's always had this great defense, and that fell off last year. And then their
Yeah.
kicker, even their special teams was great, and that their kicker Justin Tucker was all over the place, and Lamar was still winning. Like he was
Yeah.
winning the impossible to win games when you're having to score 35 points and beat Joe Burrow in some of those shootouts too. So I think that really showed people the growth of Lamar and left little doubt. So he just surged. Like he got twice as many tier 1 votes this year, and I think he earned it.
Yeah, 46 tier 1 votes and then 4 tier 2. So he's sitting right at number 4 and set career, like I said, career highs last season for yards per attempt, touchdown passes, only 4
Yep.
interceptions, passer rating, sack rate. Yeah, I think it was clear cut that, and a 2-time MVP.
Yeah.
It has to be tier 1. One surprise is Matthew Stafford, and he's finally made tier 1. I mean, had a really good year, and they was just a couple plays away from actually getting to the NFC Championship, one play away really. And but I was at this stage of his career, he made tier 1. What was the
Yeah.
thing for that?
I do think the playoffs, helped him last year. I also think he's just been real close to tier 1 in recent years. He won the Super Bowl, and like I said, I might have mentioned a minute ago, some of the voters are different from year to year, so it's just possible. I think he had 21 tier 1 votes last year. He went to 26 this year. I don't think everybody just changed their mind on Stafford. Maybe I just had a few different people in there who were higher on Stafford, and so he just inched into the top tier. I do think, though, if people knew that he was going to, be having this back issue, that may have raised. He may not have. He probably would not have made it because people would associate that with his age. So we'll see if he can get healthy and be good to go for the season. But it's got to be a little bit concerning right now.
Yeah, that definitely heading into this upcoming season. So so those are the tier 1. Now we got to talk about tier 2. We got Jaden Daniels, Justin Herbert, Jared Goff, CJ Stroud, Jalen Hurts, Baker Mayfield, and Dak Prescott and Jordan Love also, and Brock Purdy. That is the tier 2. So I guess let's get into the Jalen Hurts conversation,
Yeah.
which has been a talking point. Him as a tier 2, which I think he's right there. I feel like he's a little higher. And I know there's the debate of the team around him, but
Yeah.
he proved at least that he can he beat all those guys, all those tier 1 guys. He beat all those guys. He plays big in those big games. And yes, they were more of a running football team last season because of trying to have Jalen throw the ball 30 40 times. So they kind of just scaled back. But when it mattered and it counted, compared to some of the other quarterbacks, he plays big in big games. So, but I felt like he maybe elevated a little bit higher. I probably wouldn't. Me personally, probably wouldn't have him higher. He wouldn't be Jaden Daniels just because of 1 year wouldn't be higher than him. But go ahead and
Yeah.
about the whole
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
So this is kind of funny because 2 years ago when he was coming off of a Super Bowl loss, he was actually higher than he is this year. He had a better grade, and he had more tier 1 votes. And so you're like, wait a minute, now he wins the Super Bowl and he's lower, and you're like, okay, what does he got to do to go higher? And I think here's what I think happened earlier in his career when he first came in. There was a lot of questions about him as a passer. And we knew he could run, but the reason he went in the second round is there was, a lot of development that had to happen for him throwing the ball. And he made that progress. I think that was why he pushed up so high into tier 2. Part of that, and this is, 2 years ago, that was because people saw the improvement. I think they were projecting this was going to continue and he was on his way. Maybe he could even go to tier 1 at some point. And then over the last couple of years, like you said, Saquon Barkley comes to the team. The year before that was kind of a weird year. And I think that the perception of Jalen Hurts is that, yeah, he did improve as a passer, but they didn't really build off of that. And now they took the ball out of his hands, gave it to Barkley. I think people like him and think he's a really good player, on a team with a bunch of really good players, but they question whether they could really putting the ball in his hands more to throw it around would really be best for him or the team. I think people feel like some of the guys ahead of him, maybe even Jaden Daniels, but certainly Justin Herbert, to an extent Goff, maybe C.J. Stroud. Those guys, if you put the ball in their hands more, uh, they may flourish doing that. Whereas Hurts maybe needs to have it a little bit more managed. And we can debate whether that's true, but I think that's the perception.
Yeah, for sure. And then yeah, you're right. I think that is a big perception. And he said like Justin Herbert uh can't doesn't win in the playoffs, So it's like you said, it's like always that debate. And Jalen has a really good, I mean, he's a Super Bowl MVP now and really good playoff record. And I know
Yeah.
the debate would be, well, better team, which is true.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, it was just, it's interesting what
The
Jalen Hurts. The whole thing is where he ranks, but he's definitely top 10 for sure.
Yeah, what's interesting is like trying to give the credit, and you see this happen to like 49er quarterbacks. It's
Oh yeah, yes.
like Jimmy Garoppolo had great stats, but everybody kind of knew that he wasn't that great. It's like,
Mhm.
hey, it's what's around him, the weapons. It's Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy at the very down at the bottom of tier two. Like
Yeah,
he's been to a Super Bowl and he's put up really good numbers. And yet people are like, it's when you play them, it's McCaffrey, it's Kittle, it's Ayuk or Debo Samuel in the past. It's Kyle Shanahan scheming it up. If you put him in a different system, he'd be a little bit more like the seventh round pick that he was. Fair or not, I think that plays into it.
yeah. And I think that's when with the evaluation, I think that does play into it. Let's get into Jaden Daniels, who made a huge jump, new to the tiers.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
top of the top of the second tier here, had a tremendous rookie year. Um, it's a big jump. I just the thing I would ask is there any questions about maybe could it be the CJ Stroud type of situation where he has
yeah,
that second year and now coaches and now have tape on them and they'll be
yeah.
more better prepared. So why do you think such a big leap even though he had a tremendous year last season?
I think people just feel like he's kind of got the whole package. Like it's just
Mm,
the maturity. He's a good passer already. He's not just a runner. I think he can sort of do it all. He seems to really put in the work. There just doesn't seem to be anything other than, I guess, he got a little banged up last year running and had a rib issue that hurt him, and so that's a possibility for him. We'll just see over time. I'm with you a little bit. I think it'll be like I think he deserves to be where he's at off of last year. I get that because when you go to the championship game with a team that
yeah.
no one was really predicting to be that good, and you don't have a top defense, they're at a bottom 10 defense in the league, and you're such a focal point of the offense at quarterback. I mean, to me, this is fine to put him here, but I do think there's a good chance that defenses will do a better job against him next year, and it'll be harder, and people will gun for them a little bit more, and it could be some more ups and downs. Maybe he improves a little bit, but I'm not totally sold on the team around him either.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's the potential for a Stroud type situation is definitely there.
Yeah, and I mean, he like I said, he went to the NFC Championship with a with a bottom ranked defense, but
Yeah.
he really did carry he did carry this team. And it
Hmm.
says has the arm, legs, and processing. Just took the team to a championship game with a non-championship caliber roster. You can't say enough about Jaden Daniels, and we said he could beat you with his legs and his arm. Uh, yeah, he's. I definitely think he's top. He's definitely tier two. I don't, for me, he's a little lower in the tier two ranking, but I
Yeah.
see I see him now. He
Yeah.
does it again for sure.
Like for you, and I think for a lot of people, like if we switched Hurts and Jaden Daniels in this, I think a
Mm,
lot of people would like that better. Put Hurts at the very top of tier two. Hey,
yes, I
okay, he's
would.
not quite with those guys in tier one, but Super Bowl winner, been there 2 of the last 3 years. Give him his due. And Jaden Daniels solidly in tier two, but let's see it again. Like I think you could make a case for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree 100%.
Yeah.
100% agree with that. All right, other tier two quarterbacks. Dak Prescott took a little bit of a dip, was not healthy last year, wasn't having a good year before he got injured as well. Where do you see Dak Prescott? Do you see him improving? He's a little older now, and now with
Yeah.
the injury history, but Dak Prescott down towards the bottom of tier two.
Yeah, I think that Dak Prescott just more than anything needs some playoff success. I think
Yeah.
he's established as a good quarterback, but it's just kind of been the same thing year after year. And now he's a little bit older, probably, just a little bit less athletic. He's had some injuries. Uh, I don't know how it seems like he's not that exciting at this point,
Mhm.
although 2 years ago he was second in MVP voting. Don't forget that he put up some really good numbers.
Yeah.
They had a run before last year of 3 years where they were second to Kansas City in regular season wins. I just think people are tired of that and want to see something happen in the playoffs and see him rise up more than he has in those big moments.
Yeah, yep, that's true. Yeah, the Cowboys in itself hasn't had. I think it's been 30 years since they went to the NFC Championship, and now Dak's, like I said, a little older, coming off injury, um, doesn't win in the playoffs. Yeah, I think he's probably. I agree with where he is in this tier.
Yeah,
So let's go to tier three, which is a starter, legitimate starter, but needs a heavier running game or defensive component to win, lower volume, drop back passing offense suits them. We have Kyler Murray, Aaron Rodgers, who was a perennial tier one, Tua Tagovailoa, Trevor Lawrence, Geno Smith, Bo Nix, Sam Darnold, Drake May, Caleb Williams, Bryce Young, and Kirk Cousins. Any surprises or anything? Well, we'll talk. Let's talk Aaron Rodgers and how much he
yeah,
has dropped from tier one now to tier three.
yeah,
Maybe got one more year left, maybe
yeah, yeah.
in Pittsburgh. But what was the significance of his drop? I know probably
You
age and
know,
just declining
yeah,
skills.
yeah. Well, he got votes in four different tiers. He got
Yeah,
one tier
yes,
one, 16 tier two, 27 tier three, six tier four. So
mhm,
I think opinions really mixed, and I understand that. I think
yeah,
you can make a lot of cases for how it might go. The reality is he's 41. He's probably healthier than last year because he was coming off the Achilles. I think he got a little better late last season. He's in a new place though. Hasn't put in a lot of time with the receivers or the offensive coordinator. I think he just showed up in June, so I would think there's going to be some growing pains there. Hopefully for him, he can stay healthy. Hopefully for him, the defense plays well, and they can run the ball, and then Rogers can maybe help him win in some 2-minute situations and that sort of thing, but not have to really carry it and take a bunch of hits because he can't get out of the way. At least he couldn't
yeah,
last year, and that's a problem. You're gonna be vulnerable to taking sacks and killing drives and maybe getting hurt if you can't make the first defender miss. And it looks to me like he hasn't been able to make the first defender miss consistently enough. So that could limit your offense.
yeah, definitely. He can't move like he used to. I mean, he can still throw the football, and he said
Yeah.
maybe a new situation in Pittsburgh could help him. But yeah, the declining. I mean, the age, declining skill set, and just the history of now he was injured coming off that Achilles two seasons ago, from 2 years ago. Now he's probably where, yeah, definitely tier three. Sam Darnold jumped one tier
Mhm.
as well. Had a tremendous year, and now in Seattle. What was the overall take on Sam Darnold?
Well, it's funny because he's almost tied with Geno Smith, just a notch ahead of him, and that's who
Yes,
Seattle
yeah,
moved on from.
yeah,
So,
for sure.
I think most people feel like Geno Smith is the safer, more established guy, probably better in 2 minute, probably better handling, more of a pass oriented offense. I think for Sam Darnold, for Seattle, he's younger. Maybe there's some more upside there because he hasn't played as long. Uh, but they're going to probably try to take the ball out of his hands. I think they're going to try to run the ball a lot more in Seattle this year than they did last year, and so it could be easier for Sam Darnold. He knows the offense well there because his coordinator Clint Kubiak was with him in San Francisco. I think that gives him a little bit of an advantage. I think they will work Jalen Milroe in uh, to some different packages, which could take some more pressure off of Darnold. But at a certain point, it's going to come down to Darnold, just like it did in the playoffs last year. So I
Yeah.
think he still has to prove that he can handle it when it gets toughest.
Absolutely. All right. One more on the tier three. You got a couple of you got Drake May, Caleb Williams,
Mm-hmm.
and Bo Nix. Out of those three quarterbacks, which one do you see can improve the most this upcoming season?
I think Bo Nix is on his way to tier two, probably. I think you could make a
Okay.
case that he could have
Yeah.
got there after last year. You got to like the setup with Sean Payton. They got to like what you saw last year. They have a good defense. They're probably going to win some games. So, I think he showed some people something last year. And then, for Drake May, it's just really about the supporting cast. I think how much have they improved there? And that remains to be seen. They spend a lot of money, but you know, spending money in free agency doesn't guarantee anything. I think we just have to see if they have enough around him. And then Caleb Williams is the most interesting one because I felt like the conversation around him was, more negative and dealt with, you know, uh, the game being a little bit too fast for him last year. And so now you got Ben Johnson coming in, who
Yeah.
seems to be a bit of a taskmaster type guy, and he seems to send messages through the media and let it be known what the standard is and that sort of a
Yeah.
thing. I think that'll be interesting in Chicago as the year goes on, if it takes a while for Caleb Williams to get assimilated to the new system, which it could. I mean, a lot of times changing systems can be, take some time for anybody, even a veteran quarterback. We see some of these guys, Aaron Rodgers or Kirk Cousins, when they change, it can take some time. I remember when Carson Palmer went to Arizona,
Yeah.
he was a long time veteran quarterback, and it took him a minute to get going, half a year probably. So, will there be the patience for Caleb Williams, who still doesn't have much experience, had a tough rookie year, scrutiny on him now, and new coach who's seems to be, a tough coach. I think it'll be an interesting deal there.
Yeah, definitely gonna have him be a professional for sure. And
Yeah.
Ben Johnson's gonna, like you said, he's setting a standard, and the Bears are gonna be a very interesting team, especially in that's a tough division as well. So we'll see what happens there. All right, let's get to the bottom tier. Talked about this is tier 4. Russell Wilson, another quarterback that's on tier 1 at one point, now has really dropped. What do you see expectations for Russell Wilson with the New York Giants? And
Yeah.
do you feel like if they start slow, they will make that quarterback change?
Yeah, I think that Jackson Dart will get a chance to play this
Yeah,
season. I don't know that Russell Wilson's really a full season starter anymore. We'll see if he, holds up too, in terms of just staying healthy at his age, not being able to elude and escape like he used to.
right.
So that's why he's in tier 4 is either for a veteran who's not ideally suited to start the whole season, or for a young guy when there's not enough information. And Russell Wilson's definitely getting he got 22 tier 4 votes, 3 tier 5 votes, which means you're not even a starter anymore. It looks like he's
Yeah,
just kind of holding on at this point. That's why they drafted a guy in the first round. The rest of that tier 4, I think, I think Michael Penix could make a jump out of there.
yep,
He's in tier 4 more because there's not enough information. He got 11 tier 3 votes, which is pretty good off of 3 starts. I think there's some optimism for him. And then JJ McCarthy, Minnesota, some optimism, but also like a little bit of concern because he's been hurt and hasn't really shown anything yet. They had a good year with Darnold, probably had a tough decision to make on what to do with him. They flirted a little bit with Aaron Rodgers, so we'll see where that one goes.
yeah, yeah. And the coach Daniel Jones or
Yeah,
Anthony Richardson. Who do you think will actually come out and be the starting quarterback?
yeah,
And it seemed like it seemed like the Colts are moving more towards Daniel Jones, but
yeah,
I think they've seen
yeah,
enough of Anthony Richardson. But
yeah.
what's your opinion on that, on their situation?
Yeah, so most of the voters thought it would be Daniel Jones. I think it
Yeah,
would be Daniel Jones. I think if they don't go with Daniel Jones, it's sort of an organizational decision to give Anthony Richardson one more chance. But um, probably both will play at some point this year.
yeah, I agree, 100%. All right, just got a couple more before I let you go on this. Do you think this is just a general question? Do you think these rankings influence how teams approach free agency or the draft, particularly regarding quarterbacks?
No, not necessarily. I mean, I think teams are teams are interested in seeing something like this when it's, shows what the league thinks. But I think they have their own evaluation process and take into account things like who their coaches are, who fits best in their system when they do this, when they get into personnel acquisition.
Yeah, for sure. And what's one takeaway you hope fans gain from this year's QB tier rankings?
That's interesting. One takeaway.
Or a
That's a
couple?
Yeah, it's a good question. I just hope fans appreciate, the process here as thorough and that uh, that this type of study is different than what you typically see somewhere else. It's hard to pull off, and I hope they appreciate what it is, which is basically a market analysis of the quarterback position in the NFL.
I love it. Yes, like I told you before, I'm a huge fan. Been reading this for so many years. I've always enjoyed it. I was waiting. I said it's got to come out soon. It's got to come out soon because I only got a couple of weeks left. And
Yeah.
I was looking to see, okay, when did it release last? I think I told you this last year. When did it release the last season? And I think it was around. I think it was a little bit later last
It's a
season.
little later, yeah. I'm
Yeah, a
glad they
little
moved
later.
it up. I like it a little bit earlier. We've played around with what are the best dates. This felt like a good week. So
Yeah, this was a great week for it, right after all the first week of preseason games, and
yeah,
yeah, so definitely anyone that's want to read about QB rankings and the tiers and the breakdown. This is to me some of the best always for the last all these years. So
yeah,
but you can find it on the the Athletic. I know you shared it. You doing your podcast runs and things like that, show runs and things like that. But Mike, let everyone know where they can follow you and
yeah,
reach out or and just ask
yeah.
you some questions and things like that.
Sure. Definitely theathletic.com, definitely the Athletic app. If you subscribe to the New York Times, you'll see a lot of athletic stuff in there. You can also find me on X at Sando NFL. So there's a couple places there, and I hope to see everybody around.
For sure. All right. Thanks a lot for the time. I appreciate it. I love breaking it down with you. And like you said, it's always a good conversation starter when the rankings when the tiers come out. And yeah, because everyone has. I saw Bill Simmons had his pyramid. I don't know if you saw that. He had his pyramid. It was like right before you released your. I think it was like the day before, and
Yeah,
he was talking about on his show about it as well. And he had some different takes too. So it's always good to
yeah,
compare. As I said, Mike Sando got his out too. So it's
yeah.
really good. It's really good to have these
It's
rankings
fun.
and tiers. So really do. So I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot for your time, and hopefully we'll do this again.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right, you have a good one.
You too.
Thanks. All right, that was Mike Sando. Thank you for his time. QB tiers, quarterback tiers, breakdown for everyone that want to get into quarterback tiers, and it's always a great debates and insights and questions. You might not agree with all the takes and things like that, but this is it's a good almost like a scouting report in a way, and he's been doing it for so many years. So Mike Sando, follow him. I said theathletic.com, the app, and also you can follow him on Twitter as well. All right, until next time, got more guests coming up these next few weeks, and then until next time, thanks, Barbershop Sports Talk. What up, man? Great stuff. Thanks, man. Really appreciate it, and appreciate you guys and your support. And congratulations too on you guys' success with your show as well. Got to get you guys back on too, so maybe we can try to set something up before the NFL season starts in about 3 weeks. So I'll be reaching out to you guys. So I really appreciate the love and the support as well. So all right, man. All right, you guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Again, like I said, I got a lot of great guests coming up. Still my women in football series and fantasy football series. I got a couple more guests this week and next week, so be on the lookout for that on all the social medias. And until next time, see you guys on the next one. As always, peace and God bless.